When a little girl stepped in for her sick mom, the Millionaire CEO faced an incredible twist. Lily stood in her tiny kitchen, flour dusting the countertop like fresh snow, her back straight and determined as she stirred the pastel-colored icing with gusto. Years rolled off her shoulders while she mixed the bright ingredients. The weight of the world lifted only slightly. Outside, her mom's favorite restaurant hummed with laughter and chatter, yet inside, the silence of their run-down apartment echoed the burden of responsibility. With a blurry vision of a carefree childhood, Lily daydreamed of frosting decorated cupcakes brightening someone's day, hoping to bring joy to the people she loved, especially her mom. But deep down, tangled in her innocence, dread pulsed in her heart for what lay ahead. Walking past the shiny black car parked near the restaurant, Lily's worn sneakers hit the pavement, her resolve strengthening with each step. Today felt different. Ahead of her, the glitz and glam of a corporate gathering loomed. Fancily dressed guests with their polished shoes moved with purpose, a mirage of success. She hesitated, her small hands clutching the box of cupcakes. What if they laugh at me? Her mind raced, fear pooling in her stomach, but she steadied herself. No. I can't let fear win. I must do this for Mom. As she edged closer to the event entrance, anxiety twisted her insides. Richard Thompson, the CEO, was a looming figure in town, known for cutting costs or worse, jobs. Lily's hands trembled. One moment, she felt inspired by the thought of using her baking talents to bring happiness. The next, she was consumed with thoughts of failure and judgment. What if he doesn't care? What if he turns me away? With these thoughts colliding like loose marbles, she considered turning back, but a flicker of courage sparked inside her. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With a deep breath, she forged ahead, cupcakes raised like a trophy of hope. The sea of suits parted, and before she could second-guess herself, she stood before Richard Thompson. His cold eyes narrowed as they slid from her cupcakes to her face. Mr. Thompson, she stammered. My mom works at the diner. She's sick, and I wanted to share these cupcakes with you. It's hard for her, and as she felt the lump in her throat tighten, the urge to flee or hide growing unbearable. Here she was, navigating a world meant for adults, surrounded by the polished lack of warmth. Yet Richard, momentarily caught off guard by the unexpected encounter, looked intrigued. Something in his expression shifted. He seemed less like a corporate titan and more like a man confronting an unexpected vulnerability. As she continued to stumble through the story of her mother's struggles and her own dreams, Lily's voice quivered with passion, igniting a spark of compassion in the man that his world had long extinguished. But just then, a loud commotion erupted nearby. Reporters burst into the lavish tent, voices raised, drowning out the sweet essence of Lily's cupcakes with impending disaster. News of impending scandal threatened to wreck Richard's empire and, in that single moment, Lily felt the ground beneath her quaking as the weight of both their worlds hung precariously teetering on the edge of hope and betrayal. Would this brief connection be swallowed by the chaos? A potent fear gripped her heart, linking her fate with Richard's in ways she hadn't anticipated. Would he recognize her raw determination, or would the corporate abyss pull them both under? Feeling trapped, Lily's heart pounded furiously, her mind racing toward an unknown future, leaving her standing at the precipice between despair and a desperately sought-after chance, yet still pushed by the flicker of hope within her. The world lurked dangerously close, waiting to unveil either a miracle or a nightmare. A sudden uproar broke the fragile stillness that enveloped Lily, the urgency of chaos pulling her focus from Richard, who remained a towering enigma. The splash of cameras and shouts rushed through the atmosphere, seeping into her thoughts, clouding her resolve. As she stood there, cupcakes less an offering and more a lifeline, she wrestled with the thought that perhaps she'd encountered this moment only to watch it slip through her fingers. Richard's gaze was drawn outward, where reporters darted like anxious flies, buzzing with adrenaline. The flicker of concern creased his brow, and Lily, sensing the shift, became aware of her own presence, small, fragile, a stark contrast to the thunderous world of business and scandal he belonged to. For a fleeting moment, she considered taking a step back, blending into the shadows before the storm engulfed them both. But instinct surged beneath her skin, wrapping around her like a vice. Lily had fought too hard to retreat now. With quiet determination, she centered herself, her heart hammering against her ribcage as adrenaline coursed through her veins. Richard's distraction was her opening, a crack in the armor of the executive poised to dismiss her. If she hesitated, the spirit they'd begun to forge would be lost in the noise. "Mr. Thompson," she called softly but firmly, equipping her voice with unyielding purpose. The sudden authority seemed to halt him. He turned slowly, studying her anew. "Before the chaos steals this moment, can we talk? Not just about the cupcakes, but about the stories behind them?" Richard raised an eyebrow, curiosity igniting in his eyes, a signal she never expected to see. The eyes of someone intrigued, not just by the allure of business but by an earnest soul before him. "Stories?" His tone shifted, unexpectedly intimate. "What do you mean?" Lily squared her shoulders, refusing to wallow in doubt as she glanced at the throng of reporters clamoring and scrambling for a headline. She let the tremor in her hands steady, her voice unfurling like fresh dough as she spoke. "It's about hardship, resilience. It's about how my mom creates happiness for others, even when life throws her challenges. These cupcakes are a reflection of that hope, but they are also meant to remind us that we can uplift each other, even during tough times." There was a moment, a heartbeat, in which she believed, truly believed, that her words mattered. Richard's posture altered slightly, tilting towards her, as if the noise faded into a mere whisper behind them. Could it be? Could she inspire something within a man built from corporate steel? Before he could respond, a sharp intake broke from the crowd, and Lily's gaze reverted to the chaos, recognizing the escalating tension. One reporter waved a piece of paper, shouting out accusations, his voice reverberating with sensationalism. Richard winced, the brief connection floundering against the waves of negativity. I don't want to be part of this," Lily admitted, her vision clouding with uncertainty. She had stepped out from her world, pouring her heart into a stranger who had the power to alter the trajectory of her life, and now she feared that a moment of honesty might be swallowed by corporate ignorance. "Lily," Richard's voice cut through the air, direct and aware, "this isn't just about me. You have something precious to offer, something that could help me in ways I never anticipated. But right now, the world is watching, and I can't afford to appear vulnerable." As she met his gaze, the weight of unspoken promises ignited inside her. This was a crossroads for both of them. Decisions shaped their fates, illuminating the stark choices that lay ahead. Would she continue to push through fear? Could they forge an alliance in the face of uncertainty? Stirred by the flicker of possibility, Lily discovered a hidden resilience, one that called her to rise amidst adversity. But she now faced a pivotal choice: to depart into the safety of familiarity or dig deeper and confront the daunting expectations of a world she hardly understood. With a new sense of direction brewing within her, Lily felt the stirring need to act. The moment beckoned. She was ready to challenge both herself and Richard in ways she never thought possible. The question now loomed thick in the air: what truths about herself and the man beside her were waiting to be uncovered? Would they stand together in the turmoil, or would they let the noise drown their individual hopes? As the cacophony grew louder behind them, she took a breath, her decision crystallizing within her mind. This was just the beginning of something larger, something that could shatter both their perceptions forever. The cacophony that enveloped them felt like a whirlwind, but within that chaos, Lily sensed a flicker of clarity. She had always been the one to step back in the face of overwhelming circumstances, a chronic fear of exposure rooted deep within her. Yet here, facing Richard, the stakes felt different. Her heart, once erratic and unsure, began to steady with a renewed sense of purpose. No matter how intimidating the atmosphere, she was not just a bystander. She was an integral part of this story. "Richard," she began, her voice dipping reassuringly below the fray, "maybe we can use this moment to show them something real. They expect a scandal, but what if instead, we give them something genuine. Something that cannot be reduced to mere headlines? His brows furrowed slightly as he weighed her words. The apprehension in his gaze suggested an internal battle. She could see the machines of his corporate world at work, calculating how to respond, but she sensed something more profound beneath his polished exterior. He was contemplating vulnerability, which was crucial for someone whose entire existence thrived on the fortress of control. "Are you sure?" he asked, hesitant but strangely intrigued. "This is a high-stakes game, and putting our ideas out there could lead to, well, consequences." Lily swallowed hard. The consequences were exactly what held her back for so long, but the thought of returning to her old life, the one defined by fear and retreat, felt unbearable. Sometimes, the greatest risks lead to the most rewarding wins. "Trust me. I'm willing to put myself on the line." "Are you?" Richard's gaze pierced hers, a spectrum of possibilities swirling in that moment. "What do you propose?" The thought crystallized as she conceptualized a plan, a strategy that would pivot from turmoil to something that spoke from the heart. Let us leverage the cupcakes as a metaphor for resilience. We can show how a simple act of kindness can create impact, and maybe that will shift the narrative. If we speak from personal experience, our stories we may just change the course of what's being reported. Your mom's story is compelling, he nodded slowly, a newfound respect shimmering in his voice. But yours is as well. People rally behind proof of true grit. You have that in abundance. The realization of his compliment ignited something deep within her. Their fates were intertwined, and for the first time, she felt the vibrancy of her own story as part of a much larger fabric. This was not only about Richard's perceived corporate vulnerability but about her standing firm, resolute, claiming her place in this narrative. "Let us do this together," she urged, her resolve solidifying like concrete. "If we can face this storm, we can redefine who we are to ourselves and to the world." Richard contemplated her words, the noise of the crowd fading as he shifted his stance toward her, subtly signaling a shift in the dynamic. "Okay. Let us make them listen, then." As they moved to confront the reporters together, her heart surged. Sweat beaded on her brow, not from fear but from the thrill of taking the reins of this moment. They stood side by side as they prepared to speak, resolved to share their truths. Yet, as the crowd silenced and cameras focused on them once more, an unsettling sensation gripped Lily's stomach. What would they reveal? What hidden battles lay ahead once they opened that door? Richard cleared his throat, ready to take the first step, and Lily's mind raced with thoughts of what was to come. This could either be the dawn of a new beginning or a descent into chaos they could not control. The weight of their rising vulnerability loomed over her. Could they sustain this momentum they were about to create? And what if unveiling parts of their pasts led to unexpected challenges ahead? As the first question ripped through the air, piercing their sanctity, Lily prepared to answer, gripping tightly onto Richard's arm. The outcome of this gamble was uncertain, but she felt ready to face whatever unfolded. The journey to find her voice had begun, and it would change everything. And in the mounting tension, she pondered, would they rise to inspire or shatter under the weight of scrutiny? The moment hung thick with anticipation, heavy as smoke. The crowd leaned in, their collective breath held as if the world beyond this scene had paused to witness the unraveling of two lives. The first question pierced through the haze, startling Lily back to the reality of the stage she stood upon. "Richard, what's the truth behind your relationship with this cupcake initiative?" Lily felt Richard's tension as his shoulders squared even further. She sensed the mechanism of his defense beginning to grind, instincts honed over years in the corporate arena kicking in. But she squeezed his arm, grounding him and herself in this exhilarating flux of vulnerability. It was as if their shared resolve amplified the flickering light within her. "You're not looking at a publicity stunt," Richard began, his voice steady, though it trembled with the weight of untold stories. "What we're attempting to do here is redefine resilience. We've faced challenges that many wouldn't consider talking about publicly, let alone showing the world. It's not just about cupcakes or profit margins, it's about the heart behind our actions." Lily watched as the quiet stirrings of surprise passed through the assembled journalists. There was respect, she noted, as Richard dared to reclaim the narrative. He continued, redirecting the conversation much like the movements they had rehearsed, now free without the confines of calculated corporate tropes. Gripping that impromptu narrative, Lily stepped in, feeling emboldened. My mother, she was a single parent who battled illness, all while providing my siblings and me a sense of normalcy at home. She didn't give up, and it was from her that I learned about true resilience. We wanted to create a project that reflects this courage, an initiative to give back to those who feel overwhelmed by their circumstances. Every word was edged with personal power. The murmurs among the crowd hinted at intrigue, a shift in the air as they began to see these figures, once powerful corporate giants, as humans, fragile yet unyielding. This was her moment, her unglued heart revealing a strength she had long buried beneath fear. But as another question surged, this one sharper, aimed at Richard's corporate strategies, she felt a quiver of doubt. Would he step aside and allow her the space to connect with this audience? Could he accept vulnerability from someone like her, pulling the thread of their shared truths? Richard hesitated, a flicker of uncertainty briefly shadowing his determination. We're not perfect, he replied, his candidness an unexpected thrust towards authenticity. But our mistakes are just as valuable as our triumphs. Everyone deserves the chance to be acknowledged beyond headlines. It was both a revelation and a challenge, a clear moment of reckoning as he entwined their narratives. Lily's confidence surged again, charging through her as the audience became receptive, nodding along, possibly seeing something there that transcended the tumult surrounding them. This was the evolution they needed. It was no longer about putting on appearances or maintaining facades, it was about revealing the intricacies of human struggle and resilience. In this revealing, Lily found herself anew. She was not just a shadow next to Richard, she was a voice, carving space in a world that often drowned the intimate in noise. Yet, as she glanced at Richard, determination flickering in their shared gaze, an unsettling question gnawed at the core of her heart. Could they maintain their honesty once this wave washed over them? What if the scrutiny they had sought began to betray their intentions? With every moment stretching on, Lily knew they had exposed themselves to wider vulnerabilities. But in this unfolding, she felt an odd sense of liberation, albeit laced with a tension that would haunt them. What if they only want drama? She suddenly feared. Her thoughts scrambled as the true battle approached, not outside in the court of public opinion, but deep within their own hearts and the paths they had yet to traverse. As another question lingered on the tip of a journalist's tongue, the stakes suddenly felt higher. Would they emerge as redesigned champions or succumb to the very narrative they aimed to reshape? Uncertainty loomed, and just as the next inquiry began, Lily found her pulse quickening. Could she navigate the tempest brewing in their future and break through to something greater, or would old fears gaslight her into silence once more? With her heart hammering in her chest, she prepared to respond, ready once again to rewrite her script. But would she be brave enough to seize that which lay beyond the horizon of their present turmoil? The question loomed in the air, its weight hanging over Lily like a thundercloud. She shifted on her feet, heart racing as all eyes focused on the stage. The atmosphere swelled with a sense of urgency, stitching together their truths and the unknown surrounding them. As the journalist continued, she felt the boundary between vulnerability and expectation crack open, a chasm she had to step into. Why cupcakes? What evidence do you have that this initiative makes a real difference? The challenge hung sharp and poised, poking at the very foundation they were trying to build. Lily inhaled sharply, holding Richard's gaze. Here was the moment to transmute pressure into purpose. Her mind flashed back to her mother's tired smile, the pride she wore like armor, even on the days that felt darkest. Because food isn't just sustenance, it's connection. When we bake and share, we're fostering hope. It's a simple act that reflects the greater narrative of human experience of coming together to heal. A ripple of understanding swept through the crowd, but doubts persisted. Could she really articulate the emotional resonance behind their initiative? Was hope enough to counterbalance the harsher realities of their enterprise? The journalist's skepticism mirrored her own worries. But as the questions continued, she noticed Richard's steadfastness, a pillar she could lean against. He had anchored himself in a genuine desire for change, and perhaps, just perhaps, she could too. Lily. Richard's voice broke through her whirlpool of thoughts, What does success look like for you in this initiative? It was an unexpected pivot, one that caught her off guard yet sparked a new clarity within. Success, she echoed thoughtfully, would be creating a ripple. It's about families like mine not feeling alone while they face the storm. If even one person sees we're here for them, that's a triumph. There it was, her truth, drawn forth and displayed for all to see. She marveled at her own transformation. Once, she hesitated to share her personal narrative, scared that exposing her struggles would portray weakness. Now, she understood that unveiling herself was an act of strength, a bridge connecting her to others also grappling with hardships. But another inquiry pierced through her resolve. If you had to put a price on that transformation, what would it be? The voice carried a sneer, scornfully reducing their efforts to mere numbers. The challenge sent a shudder through her, clouding her burgeoning confidence. She felt her breath hitch beneath the weight of reality. Her heart pounded, and all she wanted was to flee the daunting level of scrutiny. How had she permitted herself to believe in their purpose? Richard stepped closer, his presence grounding. Transformation is priceless, but not one without accountability. We're not immune to the consequences of our choices. His words were a silver thread stitching their hopes to an unyielding honesty. For the first time, their actions felt less like a performance and more like a mission. Was accountability truly their secret ally in this venture? The warmth of camaraderie soon melted the icy apprehensions she had nurtured. They were champions of authenticity now. There was risk, yes, but worth it, too. Yet, the lack of a silver lining incubated a new mental muse. Did people genuinely want to hear their story? What if the hope they offered ultimately fell flat in a world craving spectacle? These lingering doubts had a way of whispering insidiously, threatening to destabilize her burgeoning resolve. And still, as she returned to Richard's steadfast gaze, her focus sharpened, her heartbeat slowing to match a steady rhythm of determination. They were not simply pawns. They were architects, shaping a narrative from the ground up. The next question simmered in the air, electrifying tension buzzing around them. With each inquiry, they stood on the precipice of utter exposure, assessed by those who thrived on conflict. As the familiar journalist leaned in again, Lily could feel an intangible shift in atmosphere, a jolt of suspense thrumming through her veins. Were they ready for the next leap? Would her newfound courage carry them through the deceptive tides of public opinion? And what revelations yet awaited not just from within their initiative, but from the depths of their intertwined destinies? With every shared word, a truth bubbled up, a pivotal moment about to transform the very essence of who they were fighting to become. The room pulsed with an electric charge that seemed to synchronize with Lily's racing heartbeat. Each question unleashed a torrent of her innermost vulnerabilities, but now she yearned to reveal more than just platitudes. The audience was not merely judging their initiative, they were potential witnesses to a cathartic shift. What are the metrics you will use to gauge this impact? Boomed the journalist, cutting through the moment like a knife. The question felt like a straitjacket, squeezing tight around the very essence of what she believed. How could she quantify warmth, connection, and hope? In a world so reliant on statistics, could she trust her feelings? Richard's steady presence anchored her thoughts. As she glanced at him, a flicker of encouragement sparked within her. She realized this wasn't merely about convincing others, it was about embodying her truth. Metrics could measure financial success but not the emotional transformations she desired to ignite. Success isn't about numbers, she asserted, allowing her voice to carry conviction. It's about creating spaces where people find solace in shared experiences. A moment of joy, a smile over a cupcake, those are the real impacts. Her hands fidgeted, but they were no longer signs of insecurity, they were testaments to her passionate resolve. A skeptical eyebrow raised in response, but do such moments really change lives? Can you stand by that claim? Each jab felt like a personal affront, a challenge to her very motives. Doubts churned, but with every phrase, she faced a decision, back down or stand firm. I can, because I've lived it, she replied, her words gaining strength with each syllable. I've seen the way a simple act can weave stories. Each cupcake carries with it a narrative of resilience and empathy, something that can't be broken down into a ratio. The room shifted, the air electric with a mix of resistance and reflection. Maybe they needed to hear the truth presented without a filter. The stakes had risen sharply. She could no longer hide behind the facade. She would have to own her reality, shortcomings and all. At that moment, a thought struck her: what if this entire venture was more than just about helping others? What if it was also about rediscovering herself? Spurred by an unexpected courage, she leaned into the tightness in her chest and continued. I'm here not just for others, but to reclaim parts of myself that were lost in the shadows. To show my daughter that struggle doesn't equal failure, that we can rise through the overwhelming odds. She felt something shift, not just in the audience, but deep within her. It was as if a chain had broken. The weight of expectation gave way to resolve and authenticity. The gaze of the crowd softened, the harshness of scrutiny replaced by a whisper of connection. Can you tell us a story, then? The journalist probed, his tone shifting slightly. One that illustrates this spirit of resilience? Lily felt energy swell, a reservoir of experience bubbling to the surface. She could share a moment, a memory laced with heartache and hope. There was one evening when she began, and as she spoke, her memories unfurled into a narrative tapestry rich with emotion and depth. As her story unfolded, her spirit soared. She narrated the time she baked cupcakes for children in a local hospital, their smiles illuminating a space filled with fear. Each recollection, now infused with meaning, reflected her inherent ability to connect, to heal and to empower. But with vulnerability came fear. What if sharing her past peeled back layers she wasn't ready to expose? The walls she built demanded a price for tearing them down. Yet, she pressed on, her voice steady yet fragile. The audience hung onto her narrative, each word a step deeper into her journey. And when she finally finished, applause resonated through the room, but within her, uncertainty flared anew. Had she gone too far? In sharing pieces of herself, did she risk losing control, or could it forge a deeper connection? Before she could spiral into doubt, Richard clasped her shoulder reassuringly. There, in his touch, she felt a tether to her purpose. Here we are, he said, vulnerable yet empowered. It's all an integral part of our story, isn't it? As she nodded, the question lingered: what new challenges now awaited them? Would her newly revealed strength draw them closer, or create a rift that could unravel all they had built? With fresh determination fanned by uncertainty, they were poised on the brink of a journey yet untold, casting a shadow over the path that lay ahead. Lily stepped off the stage, the echoes of the audience's applause still ringing in her ears, yet a different sound, a whisper of doubt, began to take hold. Had she made the right choices in sharing such deeply personal stories? She dragged a hand through her hair, trying to soothe the tension in her mind, her heart marking the rhythm of unresolved questions. Each stride away from the spotlight felt heavy, as if the weight of her revelations clung to her shoulders. Richard was at her side, his expression a careful mixture of pride and concern. You did great, he said softly, but his tone hinted at something deeper. You've put your heart out there, and that's no small feat yet. The praises felt muffled by her racing thoughts. What did it mean to expose her vulnerabilities while building a platform meant to uplift others? She had spent years constructing the walls that now seemed porous, and every brick she laid vulnerability with risk. Would facing her fears open gates to new connections, or allow the insecurities she battled for so long to creep back in? Are you okay? Richard's voice sliced through her introspection. She paused, hesitating. I think I might have overshared, she confessed. The honesty surprised her, a confession of her own fragility. Or maybe you've just let in the light, Richard replied, tilting his head slightly. Opening up can be enlightening. But what if the light reveals things I'm not ready to confront? Lily's fingers curled around a notepad she had clutched during her talk, betraying the turmoil within. Then you confront them, he encouraged, his gaze unwavering. You're not alone in this, remember? You have people like me who will be there to support you. For the first time that evening, a flicker of hope surged within her. Perhaps this journey wasn't solely about the cupcakes or the people she sought to help, it was also her own. But as daunting as that challenge felt, she understood it would demand every ounce of courage she could muster. She and Richard made their way back to the small office they used for post-presentation discussions. The space, filled with mismatched furniture and scattered sketches for upcoming projects, felt oddly comforting. But now the air was thick with tension and uncertainty over the revelations she had shared. Sitting down, she took a moment to breathe deep, gathering her thoughts. What's next for us? The question hung, heavy in the air, reflecting a multitude of uncertainties she hadn't fully processed. That's what we need to figure out, Richard replied, his brow furrowing. Your story resonated with them, but that vulnerability has laid a foundation. We can dig deeper into that connection, but we first need to define what it is we're really doing with this momentum. Lily nodded slowly. He was right. They had ignited interest, but now, with the stakes higher than ever, the shared path before them needed clarity. Could we possibly set up a workshop? She thought out loud. Engaging with people could sustain that emotional thrust and make them feel involved. Richard's eyes sparkled with intrigue. Great idea. But what if we take it a step further? Maybe a collaborative project with local community centers? Something that captures those small moments you talked about baking together, sharing stories as he spoke. Lily saw images flicker in her mind, laughter echoing between families, children smiling wide with frosting on their faces. Suddenly, her heart raced with excitement. We could create a safe space for everyone to express themselves, a place where precious stories come to life. But just as quickly as her enthusiasm soared, a familiar feeling crept back. What if she opened more chapters of her past? What if the scars from old wounds resurfaced? She bit her lip, wrestling with her determination to push forward against the fear clamoring for attention. Were those questions she needed to face? Richard broke her contemplation, his voice gentle yet certain. It's okay to feel scared. We'll navigate it together. The honesty you've shown today could serve as a powerful catalyst, connecting fractured narratives within this community. But dive too deep before you're ready, and it could drown you. The gravity of his words struck her. She was on the cusp of something significant, a venture that could alter not just her life, but the lives of others as well. What if I stumble or show more than I intend? I can't control how people see me, and that terrifies me. Then we'll take it one step at a time, he replied. We're embarking on a shared adventure. Embracing the fear is part of the journey. But it's also about the connections we create along the way. In that moment, she felt renewed. Yes, the unknown loomed ahead, ready to intertwine with her life and possibly challenge her weaknesses. But didn't it also promise growth, engagement, and healing? Perhaps vulnerability wasn't a weakness but a strength waiting to be refined. As they wrapped up their conversation with plans for the next steps, an email notification pinged on her phone. Consciously avoiding it up to now, she felt compelled to look. But just as she reached for it, Richard spoke again. Once we start implementing, we need to be prepared for criticism. Not everyone will resonate with our vision. The email demanded her attention, anticipation bubbling as she opened it. What words awaited her, weaving into the journey they were beginning to chart? And as she read, a jolt of realization rippled through her. The challenges they faced were not purely professional. The personal stakes loomed larger than she had imagined, each word stirring the fight within. What did this mean for her newfound resolve? The journey was just beginning, but would her commitment hold when faced with this looming conflict? Lily stared at the screen, her heart quickening as she processed the contents of the email. It wasn't just another query or a standard response. It was an invitation, a chance to present her ideas to a local nonprofit aimed at empowering youth through art and creativity. The weight of possibility hung in the air, invigorating yet daunting. Hey, what's that? Richard asked, leaning closer, curiosity evident in his posture. It's an opportunity, she said, her voice a mix of excitement and trepidation. They want me to pitch the workshop concept we discussed, focusing on creativity and storytelling for young people. A grin spread across Richard's face. This is amazing. You thought it could be just about baking, but it's so much more than that. It's your chance to tap into the hearts of a younger generation, to encourage them to share their stories. As Richard's enthusiasm washed over her, doubt flickered through her mind. Yes, it was an incredible opportunity, but with it came the pressure to deliver. What if she failed to inspire? What if her own uncertainties stifled the creativity she aimed to encourage in others? How do I even start? She asked, the question slipping from her lips before she could hold it back. Richard's hand found hers, grounding her. Just recall the essence of your own story. What brought you here? Your passion for baking? Your childhood memories? Inspire them from your heart, and they will connect with that honesty. Heart racing, Lily felt an ebb and flow of hope and fear. Both thoughts clashed within. How open could she be? Who would she become in this endeavor? We need to prepare, she said, her mind racing with ideas but still tethered by her fears. I have to create something that resonates, something that shines with authenticity. But what if they see through my mask? They won tea if you present it genuinely, Richard reassured her, a sage confidence echoing in his voice. You've already faced so much. This could be the defining moment that connects you to those kids and to yourself. Lily took a deep breath, picking up her notepad, her fingers dancing over the pages filled with sketches of concepts and ideas. She pushed herself to think deeper. What lessons could she distill from her experiences? What stories could transcend the boundary between her past insecurities and this new potential? She wrote frantically, excitement mingling with apprehension. What if I included elements of my own childhood experiences? She proposed, her thoughts sparking more ideas. I could share how I used baking as a way to deal with feelings of isolation, turning them into something tangible and delicious. That's it. Richard exclaimed. Use your vulnerability as a bridge. The kids will relate. So many of them have struggled with similar feelings. A surge of determination unfurled inside her, pushing her self-doubt to the periphery. If she could frame her own past struggles into a narrative of resilience, perhaps she could inspire those kids to embrace their own stories. Still, the lurking question remained: could she manage her emotional landscape without becoming overwhelmed? As she crafted her pitch, threading anecdotes of personal triumph with practical exercises, her mind wandered to the faces of those potential participants. Would they see the girl struggling to fit in? Or would they see the woman who had learned to embrace her vulnerabilities, using them as stepping stones toward growth? After a few intense hours, she leaned back, feeling a mix of accomplishment and anxiety. The outline felt solid, yet she could still sense the ripple of uncertainty. She needed more than just a solid pitch, she needed to own her journey authentically. Are you ready? Richard asked, breaking through her thoughts. This is going to be the jumpstart you've been longing for. Suddenly, the weight of her hesitations felt lighter. Yes. But I want to practice before we present, she said, a determined glint in her eyes. I've never pitched anything like this before. I want to make sure I'm conveying not just the ideas, but the heart behind them. That's the spirit, he replied, obviously impressed. And as they practiced, weaving through the potential workshop dynamics, Lily felt a sense of empowerment she hadn't anticipated. The fear was still there, but now it was an echo at the back of her mind, not the driving force of her actions. She cleared her throat, owning her voice for the first time. I'm ready to face this, she said, a resolute fire igniting within her. I won't just be sharing ideas. I'll be sharing my story. The next day loomed on the horizon, filled with uncertainty and promise. Each moment brought her closer to what could either be a stepping stone or another hurdle. And as she closed her notepad, the question danced in the recesses of her mind. What awaited her when she finally stepped into that room? As she lay in bed that night, a thrilling rush coursed through her, mixed with apprehension. Would this be the moment she truly began to embrace who she was meant to be? The questions flickered like stars in her mind. What if acceptance came not just from her audience, but from within? The next chapter of her life beckoned, but nothing could prepare her for the unforeseen twists that awaited her when she stepped into that room to face her audience. Lily stood outside the nonprofit's building, a sleek, modern structure that loomed before her like an unyielding mountain. Shadows danced in the corners of her mind as she drew deep breaths, filling her with the sense of weighty anticipation. It was no longer just about delivering a pitch, she needed to genuinely connect. The stakes felt monumental as she clutched her notepad tightly, its familiar bulk a comforting reminder of her preparations. "This is it," she muttered to herself, her voice barely above a whisper. Steadying herself, she pushed open the glass door. The crisp air in the lobby brushed against her skin, a sharp contrast to the swirling warmth of her anxiety. As she walked toward the conference room, she could feel the electric pulse of possibility coursing through her. Faces of potential participants swam through her mind, flickering images of nervous adolescents, each carrying their own burdens. What did she really want them to take away? She imagined the weight of her story balancing on the precipice between vulnerability and empowerment, begging her to step off that edge. Inside the room, a long table awaited. Heads turned as she entered, and for a brief moment, she felt exposed, like a solitary figure under a spotlight. She was met by a mixture of skeptical and hopeful expressions, a reflection of her own uncertainty. Her hands trembled slightly as she set her notepad on the table, the chance to influence within her grasp. "Welcome, Lily," the moderator said, smiling warmly. "We're eager to hear your ideas." His encouragement was a lifeline, yet her old fears began to gnaw at her composure. What if her voice faltered? What if her thoughts were met with indifference? But in that instant, she remembered Richard's words, and she anchored herself in the depth of her journey. "Thank you," she began, her voice stronger than she felt. "I'm excited to share this workshop concept with you, but I want to start with my story." As the words flowed, she painted a picture of her past, the isolation of her childhood, where baking became her solace and her art. She talked about her journey toward understanding her own emotions through the power of creativity. Each revelation she shared felt like a step into the unknown, but the fear that once loomed over her began to dissipate, replaced by a fierce clarity. The audience shifted subtly, their skepticism melting into curiosity as she opened up about the insight she gained from her struggles. She could see on their faces the recognition of shared experiences, and in that response, she felt a validation that fueled her passion. This was it, the connection she had longed for was blooming in real time. Then, midway through her presentation, the atmosphere shifted. She caught sight of a girl sitting in the back, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. Lily paused, uncertainty creeping in again. Should she focus on the planned exercises or address the silent plea echoed in those eyes? "Before I dive into the activities," she said hesitantly, "can I ask you, what story do you wish to share?" The raw vulnerability in her question echoed against the walls, and for a second, the room holding its breath felt overwhelmingly charged with emotion. The girl blinked, surprised by the direct involvement. I don't know how to tell mine," she finally admitted, her voice trembling. A pang of recognition shot through Lily. She had stood in those shoes before. With each breath, she remembered her quiet resolve, how she wished someone had asked her the same. "You're already on the right path just by wanting to share. I once thought my story was too small. But every story has the power to touch a heart." In that moment, Lily knew she was no longer just a presenter. She was bridging a gap, a connection forged from shared understanding. Her past struggles transformed into present strength, while the spark of challenge ignited a deeper purpose. As she wrapped up her pitch, her motivation crystallized. This was about more than just ideas, it was about giving others the voice they feared to use. Her heartbeat quickened with exhilaration as applause filled the air, but doubt still lingered. Was she truly enough? The opportunity exchanged for the anxiety of that girl's admission revealed a new element of her journey. What if the real twist lay not in the success of her workshop but in the realization that vulnerability can also empower others to tell their own stories? As she left the room, buoyed by the experience yet unsettled by the interaction's implications, one question resonated with her: had she truly stepped into her purpose, or was this just the beginning of her own unfolding story? Lily stood at the threshold of her small apartment, the aroma of freshly baked cupcakes wafting through the air, carrying echoes of her childhood ambitions. The sun spilled in, illuminating her surroundings as she contemplated the weeks past since her first encounter with Richard Thompson. The transformation had been rapid and profound. No longer the timid girl seeking validation, she now embraced her role as a leader, capable of inspiring her community through creativity and storytelling. The workshop had blossomed into a resounding success. She had walked into that conference room uncertain but emerged with confidence burning brightly inside her, proving her story mattered. The laughter and tears exchanged with the group of young participants had shattered her lingering doubts. Each child's story shared amidst vibrant frosting and sprinkles reignited the very spark she had once sought for herself. Lily understood the true currency was connection, words shared, hearts opened, and shared resilience laid bare. Today, her apartment was filled with the aroma of success, not just from her baking, but from a nurturing desire to create spaces that mirrored her own journey. She had launched a series of workshops, not merely focused on baking, but on channeling creativity through art, food, and shared narratives. The text notification pinged her phone, pulling her from her reverie. Richard's name flashed across the screen, an invitation to lunch. They had begun to weave their ideas together into a community initiative that combined business acumen with heartfelt storytelling, a partnership she never anticipated yet cherished deeply. He had grown from the corporate titan she once feared into a mentor, one who recognized the significance of vulnerability within their professional realm. As she arrived at the cafe, she spotted him at their usual table, a grin spreading across his face, lighting up his features. The discussions had shifted. They were no longer about risks associated solely with corporate decisions but focused on genuine human experiences. Each meal together was another layer added to their shared narrative. Lily. You won't believe the feedback from the last workshop. Richard exclaimed, excitement bubbling in his voice. Parents called in, praising not just the baking, but the way their kids felt heard for the first time. At that moment, a wave of pride surged through her. It was everything she had hoped to accomplish. They had voices to share, and you helped give them a platform, she replied, feeling as though they were both basking in reflected glory. After several months dedicated to overcoming her fears and embracing her own story, she had earned the professional recognition she'd long craved. Recently, she had been invited to speak at a local conference, her very own tale of resilience taking center stage. This was confirmation of her journey's worth, proof that her narrative reached people beyond the confines of her small community. Speaking engagement next week. She beamed, the news rushing past her lips. I'll be sharing my journey and encouraging others to embrace their stories. Richard took a sip of his coffee, eyes lighting up once more. This is incredible. You've conquered something monumental. The girl who once hesitated is boldly stepping into her identity. You're changing lives, including your own. His affirmation anchored her, crystallizing her transformation. She felt no residue of prior uncertainty. Instead, confidence filled that void left over from her past. She no longer faced the expectation to fit neatly into a box. Her worth wasn't tethered to how others perceived her experience but rather how she chose to share it. Lily had conquered her fears and the stifling weight of self-doubt, evolving into a force of compassion. She was no longer simply a girl baking cupcakes for approval but a woman inspiring stories that lay hidden in the shadows, urging others to rise. They finished lunch, laughter spilling over the cracks of serious discussion, and as she departed, she turned to Richard, a renewed spark in her eyes. Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for letting me be part of this, he replied, and she felt the promise of their collaboration amplifying the power of their individual stories. As she stepped outside, a world laced with opportunity awaited her. The sun embraced the horizon, illuminating her path ahead, each moment a testimony of personal achievement. She looked skyward and whispered a silent affirmation. I am enough. This was her moment of profound fulfillment, the realization that her journey had just begun. And as she walked towards the future, the thrill of what was to come hummed in her veins, interwoven with every cupcake baked and every story shared. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now, this is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.